So the next question which comes up is, who are the entities which are actually covered under the ESR? Like I mentioned briefly, the entities which are covered under the ESR can be the entities which are incorporated within the UAE, generally referred to as the onshore entities, or even offshore entities can be covered within the ESR regulations. But the more important part is that they should be carrying out the relevant activity. If they are not carrying out the relevant activity, they are not covered or impacted by these regulations. So, which are the entities which are covered under the ESR regulations? The licensee. The word licensee indicates that you need to look at what is the license of the particular entity says. If it mentions that the company is carrying out one of the 9 activities which are referred to as the relevant activity, then there are certain additional tests you need to perform to see if they are covered under the ESR regulations or not. So a licensee which is carrying out means doing a relevant activity, will be covered under the regulations. Now there are 2 parts to this. The first entities which are covered are the UAE onshore companies which are incorporated in the mainland. But like I said, the important part is they should be carrying out one of the relevant activities. In addition to the onshore companies, even the free zone companies or companies which are in free zone either as a representative office or a branch of a foreign company or other commercial enterprises, they are also covered under the ESR regulations. The basic condition again is they should be carrying out one of the relevant activities. If they are not carrying out the relevant activities, they are not covered under the regulations. Now within this, there are 2 questions which generally tend to draw attention and which, based on our experience, people have actually asked us in the past. And these 2 questions are, is this regulation applicable only if I am a subsidiary or a part of a foreign multinational group? The answer to that in the context of UAE is no. It doesn't matter whether you are a foreign owned entity or you are a domestic entity where the foreign companies do not have any shareholding. Both the foreign entities having their subsidiary in the UAE as well as domestic UAE enterprises are covered. But they are covered only if they are operating in the relevant activity. The second question is, when we talk about relevant activity, the idea here is, in the UAE, am I earning some profit? Which means, is it that the regulations are applicable only if I am earning foreign income, or it is applicable only if I am earning domestic income? At a general level, I would say that the regulations are applicable irrespective of whether you are earning foreign income or you are earning domestic income. But in some specific sectors, there is a requirement that transactions between 2 domestic companies are not covered, which means that in those cases, the transaction have to be with a foreign party. We are going to look at it now as to which are the activities where these regulations provide that the activity generating the income has to be with a foreign enterprise. So in the following business, they are covered under the ESR regulations only when the transaction which is being carried out is with a foreign party. If you're having a transaction with a domestic party, then these regulations are not applicable. So which are these businesses? The first one is the distribution business. And what a distribution business is, what is covered there is something we're going to look at a later part when we go down to sector-specific regulations. If you are engaged as a service center business, which means you are providing services to a foreign party for their business outside the UAE. So like I said, even in the case of service center activity, the transaction should be with a foreign party. Headquarter business, if you are providing headquarter services to your domestic entities, that is not covered as a part of this regulation. But if you provide headquarter business services to a company outside the UAE, that is something which is covered as a part of these regulations. And high-risk IP business. We're going to look at as to what actually constitutes a high-risk IP business as we move on to the relevant activity in the later part of this course. But yes, what you need to remember is if you are engaged in a distribution business, if you're engaged in a service center business, if you are providing headquarter business services, or you are in high-risk IP business, the activities will be covered only when you are dealing with foreign party. The domestic transaction for these businesses are not covered as a part of the regulation. Now, let us look at that there are some exceptions where the entities are not covered under the ESR regulations. What that means is that even if you are carrying out a relevant activity, let's say distribution and service center business is one of the activities. If you are engaged in a distribution and service center business, even then you may not be covered under the regulations. What are the exceptions? Let's look at them. Now, basically, if you look at this structure, there is a covered entity which is right there down at the bottom. In this covered entity, there are two owners, one which is marked in the gray box, which owns 100% directly in the covered entity. But within this holding company, 51% is held by another set of shareholders. So we can say that insofar as the covered entity is concerned, the owners marked in the gray box are direct owners, whereas the owners marked in the box above are indirect owners of 51% in the covered entity. So what the regulation provides is that if the owners referred to on the right side of the picture is the federal government of the UAE, which means either they directly own 100% or directly own more than 51%, or they indirectly own 51%. Or if government of any of the Emirates of the UAE are the owners referred to on the right side, or a government authority or a government body owns directly or indirectly 51% or more in the covered entity, then the regulations are not going to apply to this covered entity.